Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Over the last several weeks, I've gotten the opportunity to really get to know our guest today. A remarkable individual, brings a real positive energy to the conversation and the groups that we belong to. And I just felt compelled to bring him to you, mainly because not only is he a brilliant individual, but there's different parts to his business that he's done that is unique to the beyond seven figure landscape. Traditionally, when we look at companies that have a primary strategy of word of mouth and referrals, they tend to stay around that 1 to 3 million. That's usually where they get stuck. But this is a testament not only to the deliverability and the high level of service and whatnot this gentleman produces, but he's taken his company well beyond that $3 million ceiling. And then, of course, through that, not only has he done really, really well, but he's also building in a lot more scalability and marketing and sales systems now. But we'll dive into that and a whole bunch more. He's the founder of a company called Altum Strategy Group. Matt Gantner, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Charlie. Appreciate it and looking forward to today's conversation.
No worries, buddy. I'm curious. I noticed that you've got quite the resume. I mean, you started, or not started, you worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers for a number of years, then Sonera, and then over on Focal Point. You had quite the career and very successful in your roles. There's so many people that would look at the career that you were in and I guess not take the risk of being an entrepreneur because you had a pretty cushy job. So what made you take that risk of starting your own business?
Yeah, so I guess to start off, it really goes back to when I was a kid. So I'm first generation here. So my parents came from the Philippines and from Germany, respectively. And especially my dad, he was always focused on automotive repair. So he was a Mercedes-Benz technician for his entire career. So I grew up with screwdrivers and hammers in my hands when I was a kid. But he ultimately opened up his own shops, and I was able to see firsthand what it's like to actually run a business and the type of freedom that creates not only for my father at the time, but also for us as a family. So when I really started my kind of career journey, I was really always passionate about getting into consulting and helping people solve the hard stuff. And that's really what we still continue to do today. But then I got to a point in my career where I really had, as many entrepreneurs do, it's either you can continue kind of path A, or you can take the risk and jump out on path B. And with the support of my wife and my family, I made that jump in 2019 to really get out there and really help companies in that kind of upper mid-size space really continue to scale and unlock their full potential.
Now, I find that when it comes to parents, the same thing goes for parent mentors as well, where there are certain lessons, they come in two forms. They teach you lessons that you want to emulate and follow, and then they teach you lessons that are more so, this is the mistakes they did, and so I don't want to do that, and so we'll make a different decision. So when it comes to your dad, who sounds like he did pretty well in his automotive repair shops, what are some of the core lessons either that you learned that you wanted to do that he did, or you decided I'm not going to follow that path and I want to do something completely different?
I think for me, the lessons that my dad taught me that I want to emulate to start there were really make sure you surround yourself with good people, right? So that's the
Yeah.
one thing that whenever you went to, my dad's shop, there was always my dad and a good set of technicians that were working with my father, and they always put their customers first, right? So if you look at the way Altum operates, we put our people first and we put our clients first, right? In terms of how we take care of them, how we engage with them, et cetera. I would also say that my mother was a very important piece of this equation. I'd be remiss not to say that, right? She was really kind of my dad's rock, as all businesses go through good times, bad times, in between times, right? She was always there. So for me, also having a very supportive partner in the journey has been crucial to our success. In terms of things I stray away from, I think that it's really important to not only surround yourself with good people, but also people that know more about certain topics than you do. Because again, as an entrepreneur, I don't know everything. All right. I'd be the first one to say, hey, I don't know, but I know the right person that can either help me or can put me in touch with the right person to have this conversation with. So really having the right kind of support, be it internal or external team that you can lean on to say, hey, in tough times or in good times, what's your thoughts? figure out, does that make sense? Does it not make sense for the business? And then really being able to incorporate that. So I think my dad had some challenges with the types of people that were around him, but I think ultimately he had a very successful outcome from that.
There's a real difference between front of the house and back of the house. And, front of the house is anything that we do to attract clients and leads and so forth. And that's where speed is a huge advantage. But back of the house is when we're delivering on the services and what people have paid for. And at this point, your clients aren't paying for speed in most cases. I mean, they want you to get things done on time and on budget and so forth, but they don't want you to cut corners. They don't want you to get things done for the sake of speed. They're more focused in on getting the results.
Right.
And so there's that acceptable speed, but more important, that's where it's really about being the best and delivering the best. Would you agree?
I do. It's all about consistency, right? So like when our clients come to us, they know they're going to get quality and they know they're going to get outcomes, right? And real outcomes. So that's where in certain cases, to your point, some things need to be done quickly and iterate, right? So we may get to a V1 and then we may have to iterate through that. And that's acceptable because it's ultimately moving towards the achievable outcome. In other cases that are more strategic in nature or more, it just takes more thought and really need to be thoughtful to think through what does that look like across people, process, and tech, right? That's where we're deliberate. So I think having the ability to pull the lever to say, in this situation, what is the thing that is going to carry the day? Is it being thoughtful and methodical as you go through that delivery process? Or is it, hey, we can iterate, make go, deliver results, kind of turn the switches, and then continue to iterate, right? Because that's the speed at which our client needs us to move. So it's really finding that balance. And a lot of times you find that you have to find that balance between those two, because in all my career, I can't think of an engagement specifically that was all of this or all of that. It's always some blend of the two.
For sure. So how would you describe what your company does to a layperson?
As you know, we've been working with our message quite a bit, but ultimately where we really help is we help companies really unlock the scale to grow. And really what we do is we help companies identify the opportunities in the revenue operation space. So how to capture more revenue and also recognize revenue more effectively. We also help companies mitigate risk and manage their risk, especially in today's economy. Those risks come in different forms. And then we also help companies identify opportunities to capture more of the return on investment, right? Be that around investment in people, process, or technology. How we deliver on that is really through a combination of different services that then can help companies realize either all of those benefits or a subset of those benefits, depending on the challenges that they're facing.
Now, in your testimonials, a number of different people have commented on problems that you've solved. So what are the problems itself and how did you solve them?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of where we've had a tremendous amount of success for our customers, especially in the testimonials, is helping them to bring down, for example, their overall AR aging and bring that down from 30 plus days.
Aging accounts receivables, right?
Accounts receivable, correct. From 30 plus days down to, 15 days, for example, and really help them drive more effective cash collections and therefore better cash flow.
Before we move on, how did you do that?
Yeah, no problem. So how we did that, it was a combination of people, process, and tech. Specifically on the people side, it was making sure that the people understood the importance of the cash collection process and the timeliness that's required to get invoicing out the door and drive that collection activity. From a process standpoint, it was really building out a unified process to provide visibility to the accounting staff as well as leadership. So that way they understood how much revenue they were potentially going to realize versus what was invoiced, and if there were any variances to that, and how quickly could they collect that cash based on payment terms. And then lastly, to support people in process, we enabled technology. So we implemented Dunning, right, which is for folks that aren't familiar with Dunning, it's a way to systematically send notification to customers to say, your invoice is coming due, it's past due, et cetera, and really be more automated in that process. So putting those things together, as well as just again, training people how to outreach to clients via phone or email to kind of drive those collection activities. We're able to really help put together that unified process that ultimately achieved a very desirable outcome.
It's funny how many different businesses that we've worked with that have like reoccurring
Mhm.
MRR or ARR, and they don't have a process in place for expired credit cards. In fact, one particular client, he went years without knowing that he was delivering services to clients who had expired credit cards that he never actually collected payments on. Or when a card expires, they don't have a process in place other than a manual email to say, hey, your credit card expired, can you please update your credit card? Simple things like that are such low hanging fruit that with the right automations, all that can be done behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And with the type of technology that's out there today, in certain cases, depending on the size and scope, it could be a relatively light lift. In other cases, it could be a larger lift, again, depending on the volume in this example of credit cards and credit card data that he collects, right? Because then you're subject to some PCI, which is payment card industry regulations and those types of things, which is really the risk side of our business. Because as you implement these business processes, you have to think about what are the risks, be it cybersecurity risk, which everybody's continuing to talk about, which absolutely is top of mind for a lot of executives that I talk to these days, along with payment cards as people kind of pivot more and more towards what does this look like for credit cards going forward, especially with what cryptocurrency may or may not become. Again, too soon probably to tell in that space, but those types of things are all top of mind that have to all be baked into whatever that desired outcome may be.
Got it. So, what other problems do you solve? So, we talked about shortening the accounts receivable. And then what else?
I think a big one that a lot of companies are struggling with, especially kind of in that SMB space, is how do they implement a more robust kind of back office approach, right? So a lot of companies have grown from QuickBooks or lightweight kind of accounting packages. And then as they continue to grow, their needs change, and therefore the types of technology that they need changes. So in a lot of companies we work with, we're engaged to help them either reimagine what that finance and operations environment looks like. Do we need new systems? Do we have the right people in the right place? Do we have the right processes in place? So we'll go in, we'll assess that, and we'll provide that company with a roadmap to then basically help them achieve really that scalability across that finance, operations, and HR backbone of their enterprise.
When we started today's episode, we talked about how you've built your business from word of mouth initially and reached the levels that were far greater than your typical company that will stall out around $1 to $3 million on word of mouth and referrals. So, what have you found? And you've done this actually in pretty short order. I mean, you started the company in September 2019, and here we are just turning the corner in 2023, and you're at a level that most CEOs dream of. So, how did you do that? What's the magic sauce in what you do?
I would honestly say the magic sauce is really just getting up and staying focused on that mission of building kind of that relationship based, network based consultancy, right? So, what I mean by that is really making sure you're engaged with your network, right? And that's past colleagues, that's folks you're meeting now more and more. We're going back to conferences and things like that. Just having those regular touch points with people, because in this space, you never know when there may be a need or a challenge that comes up. And you want to make sure that you continue to be top of mind for folks as they deal with those challenges, issues, or just even have things that, hey, want to bounce a question off somebody. So being top of mind is really important and a key piece of my success and the overall company's success. I would also say it's important to make sure that you develop the right partner ecosystem. So we do a lot with technology partners to help identify opportunities for them, but also opportunities for us. And again, we're not a reseller. We don't take points on anything, but it's really that mutual beneficial relationship where if it's the right thing for our client, that's wonderful. If it's not the right thing for our client at this point, that's okay. We'll revisit it at some point in the future. So having that partner ecosystem is also really important because you want folks out there looking for opportunities that are a good benefit and mutual fit for all parties involved. And I would say the third thing is rely on the strength of your team, right? Because there's one network that's myself, but then when you put that in the context of Altum as a whole, our connections across, the US and the globe extend pretty far. So make sure you're also tapping into your internal team's network, because you never know who people may know that may result in an introduction that ultimately may result in an engagement.
Do you compensate your team for providing a referral that ultimately becomes a client?
Uh,
Coach them into how to do
yeah,
it or anything for that matter?
yeah, we do. We definitely believe in having for people first strategies. So that includes a lot of coaching. And for
Mhm.
certain folks that want to kind of transition to become a managing director, which is kind of the top level of the business, which has a quota, right, assigned to that person, we do coach folks through that, because that is a hard transition, especially for folks that haven't grown up in the consulting world, that have maybe come from industry. We do spend quite a lot of time just saying, here's what we sell, here's how we sell, here's how we deliver our services, here are the key things you want to listen to. So it takes a lot of coaching and mentoring, and then also making sure that people feel confident, because that's the key to selling is confidence, right? And knowing that you know what it is you're talking about, and being able to go with the client down kind of twists and turns of what they're facing and the challenges they're facing, to really ultimately come up with a solution that makes sense. So it's super important to spend that time, invest that time, from anyone from the most junior person to the most senior person, to make sure everybody's on point, on brand, and really understands clearly what our services are. Really, what we've built is trust,
Yep.
right? Trust and relationships. So as people move around, I've had clients of mine that have been my clients, become friends, still are my clients, right? And have hopped around different places. And we are that team that goes with folks from hop to hop to hop, because of the trust, but more importantly, because of the results that we've delivered for them throughout their careers. We continue to provide them that safety, and therefore that has created that lift, if you
Yep.
will, with the business, in terms of how we're growing, where we're growing, our focus, etc.
A word that Matt has continuously used over and over again is relationships, relationships, relationships. It's important to understand that the formula for retention is relationships plus results equals that retention, right? So relationships is a key component of it, not just results. If all you did was focus in on the results and gave people a great result, but you didn't have the relationship, your retention will ultimately suffer. If you had great relationships with people, but you were soft on delivering the results, again, the same thing, the relationships would suffer. So when you're talking relationships, as you've mentioned over and over and over again, what type of coaching do you provide your team on creating and nurturing those existing relationships?
Yeah, this is something I spend a lot of time with my team on. So at our current scale, I'm still involved on all of our projects in some capacity. So what that does is it allows me to be really sticky with certain executives with an organization, and then allow me to sit side by side with the delivery team to say, hey, this is the way this person thinks, or this person thinks based on personality or role within a company. So we spend a lot of time really trying to understand each individual person, right? Because there's similarities across levels for sure, but each person approaches that job differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to understand not only the level, but also the person that sits in that seat, and then what are the things that are keeping him or her awake at night.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time as a team focused on that, to really understand who our buyers are, who our stakeholders are at different levels, right? From bottom up, top down, to really make sure we're clear as to who people are. One of the first things we always do on every engagement is build out a stakeholder listing. And that's really important, not only from a contact information standpoint, but also to understand where they sit in the org. So that way, as we continue to engage, we're building relationships with that person with where they are today, but also thinking about where they will be in months, years from now. Because again, you want to make sure those relationships are sticky
Yeah.
and you're top of mind for those folks, whether they're at their current organization or if they move elsewhere.
One of the biggest misnomers in business is the saying that it's not personal, it's business. I believe that if you want to run a great business, a sticky business, then you have to make it personal. Relationships aren't built on just business alone. Matt, part of the reason why you and I get along so well is not only are you just a great dude, I would not want to meet the person that doesn't like you, because there is just something, I think, infectious about just who you are. But I believe, and I hope that you feel, that I genuinely care about you and your results. And I feel the same way, that, the reason why we have a good relationship is because we've looked at this as such. Like, this is a relationship. And we care about one another on a personal level, make sure everybody's, doing well and fine and the whole bit, more than just a business transaction. And
Yeah.
that's really, really critical to long-term relationships.
Yeah, I'll just build on that. I mean, it's important for me. I've kind of gone through an evolution in my career, I guess, in terms of how I've approached relationships and how
Hmm.
relationships and business interact. To your point, early on in my career, I thought business was business and relationships was just kind of a byproduct of that. Throughout my career, that's taken a hard pivot, right? Where relationships are first, right? And if in that relationship we can work together in some meaningful way, it's great, right? If not, it's still a relationship, because at some point down the road, it may turn into a business
Yeah.
opportunity, but it always starts with a relationship. And a lot of, especially a lot of my clients that have worked with me for a while, have at least virtually met my kids on Zoom and Teams and things like that. And I've
Right.
gotten to know their kids and their family. So yeah, it definitely becomes about more than, you know, hey, what's keeping you up at night? Where can we help? It's beyond that. That's kind of a byproduct of the relationship and being there for one another, personal, professionally, kind of all points in between, but really focused on that relationship and really creating that meaningful, long lasting relationship with somebody that you care about, but also that, like we were talking about, cares about me and my success as
Yep.
well.
This is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. One of my favorite questions that I ask our guests is, what is your biggest, best tip for our listeners who want to take their companies beyond seven figures?
I would say, going to the theme of this conversation, focus on relationships, right? And relationships takes the form of clients, as we've spent quite a bit of time talking about, but also in the form of focused on relationships with your internal team. Make sure you're going into one-on-ones prepared and focused. Don't have a million, a million things going on. Just focus. Just get to know that person on a personal level, their kids, their story, why they're here, what they aspire to be, and you'll get some cool answers, right? You'll get some really cool answers where I've had conversations that are like, well, I want to do this for now, but eventually I want to go be a chef. And it's like, awesome. How do we get you from here to there? And what can we do to support you? And that changes the dynamic, that changes the conversation, because ultimately you want your team to be, in the same boat with you, but also you got to be in the same boat with them, and really make sure that collectively as a whole, you're working well together. Because if that whole is working well together, ultimately your business is going to be successful, because your clients are going to benefit from that kind of one team approach to solving those challenges.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I think that is a great way to end this episode here. Again, we've talked a lot about relationships and the importance of relationships, of bridging the gap between business and personal. And the more personal you can make that relationship, the more transformative you make that relationship rather than transactional, the more sticky the relationship. As Matt mentions, that it's not only just the relationships that he has, but part of his unique ability and genius in growing this company well beyond the typical ceiling that you'll see companies hit on word of mouth and referrals of that 1 to 3 million, was just not only in that value added relationship and nurturing that relationship, but also in coaching and working with his team members and expanding into their networks and so forth. And so that is critical. Matt, people want to learn more about you or connect with you or learn more about Altum and whatnot. Where do we send them?
I'm available on LinkedIn, so feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. It's Matthew Gantner. And then to find Altum Strategy Group, it's www.altumstrategy.com.
Awesome. LinkedIn, Matthew Gantner. That's Gantner.
Yep.
And then Altum Strategy. Make sure you check them out. Matt, thank you very much for being on today's show. For more tips, strategies, and information on taking your company beyond seven figures, please also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudette with my friend Matt Gantner, and I will see you in another episode.